The Metal Gear Solid series is remembered for its rich, detailed story that works to fuse together real historical events with fiction. As the main story arc, Fox operative Naked Snake is tasked with preventing the completion of a dangerous military weapon. However, this story arc soon takes a back seat to the larger picture of the philosopher's legacy. This tiny microfilm is the equivalent of a no-limit credit card, as it contains the grand sum of over $100 billion pulled together by the world's wealthiest individuals, and was intended to be used to prevent another large-scale conflict, as was seen during World War II. The money was supposed to be split amongst the United States, the Soviet Union, and China. However, this money was stolen and hidden in several secret bank accounts around the world. The record of this money now exists in the form of a tiny microfilm, and the only way to access it is to own the microfilm itself. Between 1945 and 1950, this microfilm would be stolen by Russian Boris Volgin, the main accountant of the philosopher's money laundering activities. The disappearance of the legacy is seen secretly as the main cause of the Cold War within the Metal Gear Solid 3 universe. Since all the three major powers, those being China, the United States, and Russia, wanted the legacy for themselves. And with the disappearance of the legacy, the philosophers disbanded into three groups. Little did they know that the microfilm would fall under the possession of Evgeny Borisovich. Colonel Evgeny Borisovich Volgin was born sometime between 1905 and 1914. In his youth, he was a champion boxer and developed a reputable career as a brawler. During WW2, he served the domestic branch of the Soviet secret police. Tales of cruelty and insanity plagued his early military career. His main job in the secret police force was to stamp out all traitors and spies. According to the existing lore of the Metal Gear series, Colonel Volgin took part in the Katyn massacre. This was a series of mass executions that saw the death of 22,000 defenseless Polish military, police officers, and border guards. This occurred in the Katyn forest in 1943. Volgin also had a hand in similar massacres that occurred in the year 1943 as well, such as the one in Ukraine and Belarus. Additionally, after the war, he took part in various anti-communist purges, all the work of the brutal regime imposed by Russian leader Joseph Stalin. However, Volgin would stand out during these atrocities for his more than personal touch to interrogation.
Tell me!
Stop it!
Who have you been talking to?
He doesn't know what you're talking about.
You'd better start talking.
Please, stop this!
Who is Khrushchev's lapdog?
How can you do this to him?
I know you gave the data to someone.
Never do that.
You!
You monster.
I guess he's dead. Now then, I hope you'll prove more entertaining than he was.
He gained a reputation for being one of the most brutal spy masters, often removing the blindfolds of prisoners just before beating them to death, claiming that he was preventing a possible prisoner riot. Volgin also would play a hand in putting down political unrest in East Germany in 1953 and in Hungary in 1956. In both cases, the Soviet government showed its full might in suppression and subversion, killing all those opposed to government control. Colonel Volgin was the perfect individual to lead government efforts to subvert unruly populations. Here was a person who had no moral qualms in committing massacres in the name of preserving order. It's a trait that allowed him to stand out in the eyes of Leonid Ilyich Brezhnev, the then acting deputy of the Supreme Soviet of the Soviet Union. Facing alarming economic problems, Brezhnev would also lead a political party to oust the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. In Russian history, Brezhnev had positioned himself to be the successor of Nikita Khrushchev when he became secretary of the Central Committee. And from here, he would string together a following that directed all Soviet shortcomings to the career of Khrushchev. Khrushchev was responsible for the various economic failures, and also committed various examples of voluntarism and immodest behavior. But more importantly, Khrushchev was made to look indecisive in dealing with diplomatic affairs, particularly with the US, since the infamous Bay of Pigs incident, where CIA agents were appointed to topple the political regime of Fidel Castro in Cuba. There was mounting pressure on the part of the Brezhnev faction to take a harder stance against the United States, possibly declaring war on the US and launching a nuclear strike in retaliation of the Bay of the Pigs, in response to the possible invasion of Cuba. Now, I'm not entirely sure if Brezhnev did support a war against the US in retaliation of the Bay of the Pigs, but that's how it's presented here within Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. That's where Colonial Volgin comes into play. When US President JFK was assassinated in 1963, Khrushchev had lost his best ally in maintaining peaceful relations between the US and Soviet Russia. With the loss of the president of the US, Volgin would conspire with the Brezhnev faction and other anti-government groups along with the military to overthrow the Khrushchev regime. By 1964, prior to the commencement of the Virtuos mission, Volgin inherited the philosopher's legacy following the death of Boris Volgin. With this immense amount of wealth, Volgin would construct the Grozny Grad fortress, along with spending a vast sum to convert an abandoned prison facility into the Granin Design Bureau. It's notable to mention here that Brezhnev became involved in the development of Soviet missiles and nuclear arms in 1956 and was made a candidate member of the Politburo assigned to control the defense industry and the Soviet space program. He was very much interested in showing off the superiority of Russian technology, whether it be for military or just technological advancements. Put it simply, Brezhnev saw Colonel Volgin as a good ally to have. Not only did Volgin have the military backing, but he also had the resources Brezhnev needed to further advance Soviet technology far past the United States. As the leader of the GRU faction, Volgin used his position to ignite conflict between the United States and Soviet Russia, while also massively abusing his authority as a field commander. On July 24, 1964, he utilized the spy network of the philosophers to get into direct contact with the boss and suggest that she defect to the Soviet Union. During the Virtuous mission, Volgin used the David Crockett launcher to destroy an entire research facility, killing thousands in the process and framing the United States for the entire ordeal, which in turn caused an international crisis that prompted Operation Snake Eater. Colonel Volgin is also known by his nickname, Thunderbolt, and that's due to the physical anomaly which lingers in his body that allows him to generate 10 million volts of electricity. One of his main methods of torture as a Soviet spy master is administering electric to his victim's body. Upon using his powers, his body will radiate a neon blue that can be seen from miles away. With this ability, Volgin suffers from a number of scars on his face and body, more than likely resulting from electrical burns. And this explains why he wears a full-body rubber suit, which prevents electricity from generating anywhere else on his body other than his arms, which is why they are the only limbs that are uncovered on his body. These powers combined with his physical strength already make him deadly, but combined with his experience as a boxer, he becomes one of the most intimidating video game bosses of all time. The man is literally a walking tool of destruction. He can use the electricity to set off gun rounds that he carries around his body. He can also power up machinery using his electrical powers, along with protecting himself from enemy fire with an electric shield. One might wonder how exactly Volgin gained his powers in the first place. Unfortunately, this is just never explained, and all I really have to go off is a minimum theory at best. To me, Volgin was another product of the philosopher's research. Much of the wealth that was pulled together during World War II was used to fund the advancements in military defense, particularly in the development of super soldiers, as evident by the Cobra unit. Given that Volgin was the son of Boris Volgin, the accountant of the philosophers, it's reasonable to assume that he played some part in the military research. After all, he was another person like Brezhnev who wanted to expand the efforts to advance the military technology and research for the Soviet Union. But like I said, it's a theory, and I really haven't found any evidence that points to this claim. Colonel Volgin's character as the sinister and hateful antagonist often overshadows his larger part in conveying key information regarding the arms race which very much characterized the Cold War era. Whether you're interested in the history of the Cold War or really just want to immerse yourself in the lore of the Metal Gear series, you can appreciate Volgin's explanation on how the Cold War began and ushered in a new era of deadly weapons.
During the last Great War, the most powerful men in America, China, and the Soviet Union had a secret pact. The pact was a blueprint for defeating the Axis powers and creating a new world order. To secure victory in the war, the three countries pooled their resources to conduct the most covert types of operations and research. The atomic bomb, rocket technology, the Cobra unit. And they amassed an enormous sum of money to fund these projects, enough to fight the war 5 times over. That wealth is the philosopher's legacy. After the war was won, the three countries were to divide the philosopher's legacy amongst themselves. This explains why the United States and the Soviet Union were able to steal away the best scientific minds in Germany as soon as the war ended. But our great motherland has far surpassed its pathetic rivals. We possess enormous wealth, the most advanced technology, and overwhelming power, assets fitting of our great country. My father was one of the men in charge of managing the philosopher's legacy. In the confusion that ensued after the war ended, he devised a series of ingenious plots to ensure that the Soviet Union would have total control over the legacy. The money was divided up and laundered through banks all over the world. Switzerland, Australia, and Hong Kong. This microfilm contains a record of all those transactions. After my father's death, I learned of this secret and obtained the microfilm. With this money and the support of Brezhnev and his allies, I built this fortress of Groznygrad and Granin's research facility.
The competition to attain the philosopher's legacy mirrors both the space race and arms race lashed out by the major superpowers of the world. And through Volgin's endeavors in creating the Shagohod, he would in fact create one of the most advanced militaries in the world. If you notice throughout playing Snake Eater, Snake through conversations with Sigit would learn about all kinds of key information regarding the development of various weapons and vehicles in the Soviet Union. Several of these inventions were adopted from recovered or stolen blueprints from the United States, only to be refined and improved upon.
You say they have flying platforms out there? Flying platforms are a type of personal VTOL aircraft.
They were working on those in America too, weren't they?
Yeah, back in the 50s. They were supposedly going to be used for scouting and patrol missions, as well as to spot for artillery units and transport troops into rough territory. They even got an initial prototype off the ground in 1955. But the thing wasn't fast enough, and there were problems with getting it to stop and turn in midair, so they ended up scrapping the project. The ones you see there were built by the Soviets after they got their hands on the American design plans. The American model used a pair of contra-rotating rotors to generate lift, but those Soviet models seem to be using jet engines instead. They must have kept going with their research after the US abandoned its own project. Now they've finally overtaken us. You gotta give them credit for sticking with it.
The chopper we were talking about is flying around.
The one at the heliport?
Yeah.
Perhaps it's an armed variation of the Mi-8 hip.
No. Some of it looks the same, but the overall shape is different. It's got stub wings, and the cockpit canopy looks like an angular greenhouse.
No kidding. Then it must be some kind of new model. I've heard stories recently that the Soviets are developing a flying infantry combat vehicle. That's gotta be it.
A flying infantry combat vehicle?
Yeah, a transport chopper with troop-carrying capabilities. Think of it as an attack transport chopper version of France's AMX VCI or the Soviet BMP. They must be doing field tests on the initial prototype.
A next-generation chopper that's a little smaller than the hip. Maybe we should call it a Hind.
Not bad. It's cool with me.
The enemy units that patrol the various terrains and facilities of the game are under the employ of Colonel Volgin, and they are outfitted with the latest in Soviet weaponry. And learning about the Cold War, we as Americans often have sensibilities that make us believe that America was superior in terms of technological advancements. But that's not the case when you view how well equipped the GRU army is. In fact, the entire story of Snake Eater works in a nuanced way to convey certain realities to the player, while still adding in plenty of fiction. Anyone growing up in the United States during 1964 would have been led to believe that American military and space programs were far superior. But reality, that wasn't the case. There would have been no need to develop new weapons and technologies if we were already superior. Volgin was a man driven by his desire to ignite conflict around the world, and more importantly, use his research facility and factory to construct and distribute the deadly Shagelhot. At one point, the Colonel was actually more interested in constructing another machine of destruction. Prior to the Virtuous mission, Volgin actually had hired Alzekar Leonovich Granin to develop the famous walking tank, which would be referred to as the Metal Gear in other games. This walking tank is characterized by Granin as the missing link between infantry and artillery, as the tank could roam the battlefield and could inflict immense damage upon the opponent while at the same time resisting damage. However, the design had a few problems, which Sigit explains. Given the early problems of the design and the long-term costs of maintenance, Volgin decided to go another way. Instead of having a walking bipedal tank, why not attach a rocket to a tank instead? With that, he decided to lean towards the design scheme of Sokolov, the man behind the Shagelhot. This decision is what prompted Volgin to recruit the boss to his side, along with staging an ambush to abduct Sokolov while under the protection of the KGB.
Major, what are you doing here? I've been waiting for you in my room. Who are you? Don't play dumb with me. If you think you can fool me, you're sorely mistaken. I know the Major better than anyone else. I come here looking for Tatiana, and what should I find? But a greasy freebooter.
Internally, Volgin used his position to protect a GRU major by the name of Ilan Rakov, who was assumed to be the Colonel's lover. For years, Volgin protected Rakov from the hands of the Soviet military tribunal regarding his frequent abuse of soldiers.
Your Rykov disguise is complete. Now they won't stop you no matter what you do.
Even if I punch someone in the face?
Right.
Really?
Really.
Why?
Rykov's just that kind of guy.
One of the more despicable traits of Volgin is his willingness to kill his own countrymen, particularly if they are suspected of treason. Of course, his paranoid nature is also his biggest weakness. Midway through the story of Snake Eater, Volgin begins to fear that Snake is actually after his philosopher's legacy. This is best shown in the anger he displays upon learning about the deaths of the Pain, the Fear, and the End at the hands of Snake. He also grows more restless to finish the Shadow Hall before Snake has a chance to enter his research facility. He suspects that there might be a spy in his ranks, but ends up suspecting the wrong people. His paranoia causes him to torture and kill two of the leading scientists in the Soviet Union, all for the sake of protecting the philosopher's legacy. As a testament to his paranoia, while torturing Snake, Volgin ends up spilling his beans regarding the location of the philosopher's legacy.
Admit it! We're after the location of the legacy! The secret fund established by the three great powers during the 2 world wars. That's what you're looking for, isn't it? $100 billion, divided up and hidden all over the world. And you're looking for a record of where all that money is hidden, right? No matter. The philosopher's legacy is safely in my possession, in the underground vault of Groznygrad. You'll never lay a finger on it.
Little did he know that the two individuals who were after the philosopher's legacy were standing in the room with him. The defector to the Soviet Union was acting as a double agent to infiltrate the GRU military faction and recover the philosopher's legacy. And the former NSA codebreaker turned KGB spy Eva, who was later revealed to be working for the People's Republic of China. Volgin eventually learns that Tatiana, the supposed lover of Sokolov, was sneaking around in his secluded vault, but he never once suspected the boss of treason, and for that reason he ends up handing over the legacy to the boss for safekeeping, not realizing he just handed over his entire inheritance. Volgin is quite the video game boss. His attacks are powerful and deadly, but there are a number of ways you can beat him. As shown in the cutscenes, he is susceptible to CQC and can be brought down easy enough. Once down, he'll take a bit of damage from gunfire. Oftentimes, he will have to recharge his powers using a fuse box. If you have a Claymore or TNT, go ahead and plant it behind him while he's recharging. Additionally, you can fake your death with the fake death pill. Once he believes Snake is dead, he will turn around and gloat the ocelot, leaving you enough time to revive yourself and plant some C4 or TNT. You want to laugh? Select the Ivan mask and the camouflage and throw Volgin off for a few seconds.
Ivan. Is it really you?
Despite his defeat at the hands of Snake and Eva, Volgin did not die. Instead, he was put into a comatose state. His body would later be recovered by Soviet scientists and taken to a research facility in the outskirts of Moscow. It was here where his body was preserved for the sake of science, I guess. Volgin would reappear 19.5 years later within the story of Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. His body would become active once more on February 26, 1983, when he burned down an entire institute which housed his body. After burning down the institute, he would meet a child by the name of Trijat Rybinok, the featured psychic member of Foxhound, who would go by Mantis. Using his powers, Rybinok restored Volgin's body. Not only did he have electric powers, but he also had pyrokinesis. And from here, he would begin seeking out vengeance against Naked Snake, with the help of the young Mantis. Thunderbolt would henceforth be known as the Man of Firo. He would pursue Venom Snake and Ocelot throughout the span of the Phantom Pain incident installment of the series, until eventually dying by the hands of Snake. That concludes this look at Colonel Volgin of the GRU military faction. If you're interested in hearing me talk more about Metal Gear and the lore behind the series, well, make sure you let me know in the comments. And if you're curious to learn a little bit more about Metal Gear Solid, make sure you check out my video on the Cobra unit. This is your man Bob signing off. Thank you for watching, y'all, and have a good day.